It is 7:30 p.m. here on the East Coast, 4:30 p.m. on the West Coast. Today is December 14th, 2016. Welcome to Sports Fusion News. I'm the host, Alex Fuse. I am joined by Ben Amey, reporter for News Channel 13 right now. So, Ben, busy day today in the news, sports, politics, whatever you want to say, news. Ben, how are you doing tonight?
Doing pretty well. Enjoying my week off right now.
Yeah, so President-elect Donald Trump, if you haven't heard his name, had a meeting with tech industry leaders today. Interesting enough, Twitter was not invited. And people said within the Trump campaign organization, whatever you want to call it now, they said Twitter wasn't invited because Twitter wasn't big enough. So, Ben, what's your reaction? Twitter being left out of the tech industry leaders meeting today with Donald Trump.
Well, I mean, it doesn't completely surprise me, I guess. I mean, of the big social media companies, Twitter is one of the smallest ones out there. I guess one of the smallest mainstream ones out there, you could say. Twitter is also, in many ways, it's been said that it's an echo chamber for journalists and stuff like that. So it doesn't necessarily surprise me that Twitter wasn't invited. It could also, and this is obviously pure speculation, but it could also be connected to Twitter's actions against the alt-right movement on that platform recently. So the administration decided not to invite them. But, you know, it was good to see the president-elect reaching out to the social media companies, the technology companies, because, I mean, that's where a lot of innovation has been recently, and that's where most people believe the next generation of American jobs is coming from.
Okay, but if you had one word to describe after this election, what would it be?
Unexpected.
Okay.
I think would be the best way to put it.
Okay.
Just, I think this election season all around, we've seen things we've never seen before. You know, we've certainly seen things that, you know, certainly wouldn't have been predicted a year ago. You know, those Facebook memories that pop up, you know, people, you know, you see the articles that were written about, at that point, candidate Trump and the Republican field, and nobody really foresaw this coming. I mean, even right up until election day, no one really foresaw this coming. So it was certainly unexpected, and I think a lot of it, the president-elect's moves since then have been unexpected, and it'll certainly be an interesting 4 years moving forward.
Okay, well, the first name of this show is also sports, and I know you are a big sports fan as well, big Bills fan. Now, one main topic coming out of this past Bills game: should the Bills fire Rex Ryan? And I'm going to ask you, should they fire Rex Ryan, whether it be before the end of the season or during the offseason?
I believe that they should, quite frankly. You know, I also believe that they need to move on from the Tyrod Taylor experiment. He was a good stopgap last year. He really hasn't progressed this year. And if this is as good a quarterback as he is going to be, I don't think that's a quarterback that's going to take a team to the playoffs. But beyond Rex Ryan, I also think that Terry Pegula really needs to start fresh. I think that Russ Brandon also needs to go. You know, I think he really needs to clean house from top to bottom, start with a clean slate. Personally, I would love if they brought Jim Schwartz back. The things he did with the defense 3 years ago were insane. I would love to have Jim Schwartz back as head coach and bring in a good offensive coordinator. You know, I need to see if Cardale Jones actually has what it takes to be an NFL quarterback. I don't think that he does, but that remains to be seen. And there's a decent crop of quarterbacks coming out in this draft. I mean, it's not stellar by any stretch, but there's a decent crop in there. I don't think that they should overreach like they did for E.J. Manuel. But a quarterback in the second or third round, I don't think is a question for this coming draft, especially if they move on from Tyrod Taylor.
And also, you're a big Syracuse fan as well. And, you know, Syracuse, you know, they've been getting a lot of backlash this season. So what do you think Syracuse needs to do to become the stronger program within the next few years?
Well, I think their biggest problem this year, especially in their losses, is they're not hitting shots. Not shooters for days, and but when you shoot 24% from the field, it's going to be tough to beat just about anyone. Mm-hmm. So I think the fans got a little hyped with the first 2 wins that were blowouts, and they kind of forgot who the competition was against. I mean that UConn loss was a real gut punch for a lot of people. But I think they got the chance to right the ship against Georgetown this Saturday. And or this week, it might be Saturday. I could be wrong on that. But they got a chance to right the ship against Georgetown, and I think the big thing is people need to understand that there's a lot of new pieces on this team. This is not a cohesive group from last year, which is odd for a Jim Boeheim coach team because he doesn't like to get a whole lot of one and dones, and he's brought them in this year between the freshmen and the grad transfers and that sort of thing. So it's going to take some time for this team to gel, and I think they're still feeling each other out. But, I mean, they dropped 99 points the other night. If you drop 99 points in college basketball, you're going to win a lot of games. So I think fans just need to take it easy. And, for this season, I think they're going to do well. I think they'll go deep into March. In terms of the next few years, I think a lot of it depends on what Jim Boeheim decides to do. I mean, I think next season is supposedly his last season, I believe, with that agreement that was announced, and we'll see if that happens. If it's finally Mike Hopkins' time in the Dome, but it'll be interesting once Boeheim steps aside and when he steps aside for what's next for Syracuse basketball.
Yeah, it definitely should be interesting. And Ben, we'll switch gears and I want to talk to you a little about your career, and I want to ask you, what exactly was your first job in this career?
I actually started out as a producer of a morning show in Rochester, New York, at the CBS affiliate. That was my first job in television. Did that for just over 2 years, and so that was how I got my start. I was able to parlay a couple of internships at that station into a job after I graduated from college.
Wow. And what made you want to get into this career?
When I was a kid, even through high school, I had a varied number of careers that I wanted to do, but the first thing I had ever wanted to do was actually be an on-air meteorologist. And I just kind of circled back around to television when I was looking into what I wanted to go to college for. And, I've always been a news junkie. I mean, the news was on at dinner every night with my parents. I grew up watching Tom Brokaw. So it was, news has always kind of been in my blood. I love telling people stories. I love meeting new people. And so I think that's really what drew me to news as an industry. And, it's a lot of hard work. It's certainly not an easy job, but, I really do love it. I enjoy going into work every morning, and the crew over at News Channel 13, the morning crew, is just phenomenal people.
Okay, Ben, one more question before we wrap up this interview. I had a coworker on earlier today, Benita Zahn, and I asked her this question: most embarrassing moment on live television?
Oh, that's easy. This actually goes back to when I was in college, at my college TV station. How we had our camera set up, the camera operator had to change from something we called program to prompter. So basically, it was the camera for the weather person, and so they would switch it to program so the weather person could see themselves and what they were pointing at on the weather map. And then when it switches back to the anchor, they have to press the button and it changes it to the teleprompter again. And during the break, they had forgotten to change it back. So we come back on air, and instead of seeing the words on the screen, I'm staring back at myself. And so I knew the story that I was reading, but I kept looking at the camera and looking off to another camera to read it to make sure I was still going. And my director got into my IFB that we all wear in our ears, was telling me which camera I was on, and kept increasing in volume, I'll say, to what camera I was on. And finally I turned and I looked at the control room, because you could see the control room from the studio, on air, on camera. I just looked at it and I said, I don't have a prompter, and turned back to the camera. And the camera person immediately switched it. But they used that as a promo for many, many years at my alma mater, the TV station there. And, that was one of those things where, it's embarrassing. I can obviously laugh about it now. It's just one of those things you obviously don't want to do. But, I'd say that was probably my most embarrassing moment on live TV.
Well, hopefully that never happens again, right?
Yeah, well, I've learned my lesson. I'm not yelling at anyone on live TV.
Okay, Ben, I want to say thank you for coming on the Sports Fusion News episode and hope to have you on again soon.
All right, thank you very much.
Okay, Fuse Nation, I want to say thank you for joining me on the Sports Fusion News episode. I'll be back on in about 3 minutes with Kelly O'Donnell, CBS 6 Upstate Sports Edge host. What does he have to say about college or high school basketball, Bills, Jets, Yankees, Mets offseason? Come back in 3 minutes. Thank you, Fuse Nation. I will see you then. Thanks for watching.